Hello and welcome everyone to this MGAA market briefing. So for those of you who've not had the pleasure of listening to me at the start of one of these before, I'm Alison Cairns from the MGA. So yes, just welcoming you. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started with the market briefing. So a polite request for people to keep cameras and microphones off, because it helps us ensuring we can minimise any risk of any technical issues. And also, can I ask that if anyone has started or is going to start any AI note-taking tool, that they refrain from doing so, as we don't have the relevant permissions from everyone participating in the call. So that's my my polite request in terms of what not to do. Now a little bit more of a positive approach, just to let you know that it is being recording. One, to let you know that, but also to let you know that does mean that if you do want to pass on the link to anyone after the call, or you want to review any of the content, it will be available on our member area of the website and also on our YouTube channel. So we'll forward you a link to that probably very early next week. So also to let you know that this is accredited by the CII for CPD purposes. So if it fits in with your development plans, you can record it on your CPD logs. So that's enough from myself. So what I will do is, without any further delay, hand you over to Jay Unwin from Mental Health in Business, who's going to deliver our market briefing today on cultivating community, the cornerstone of mental well-being. So over to you, Jay.
Thank you very much, Alison. It's great to be here. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this, what is quite a special session, actually. It's for Mental Health Awareness Week, as that has begun today, Mental Health Awareness Week 2025, where the theme set by the Mental Health Foundation is community. So that couldn't really be more timely or more important. And in fact, I was just saying before we started this session to Alison that this is one of my favourite topics, if not my absolute favourite topic, and arguably, for me at least, the most important topic when it comes to mental health and well-being. So it is really great to have you here. As Alison said, my name's Jay Unwin. I'm going to introduce myself a little bit more in a moment, but I really am honoured to be sharing this space with you today. Whether it's our neighbourhood or our workplace or a WhatsApp group that we might be part of, we all have the power to create spaces where people feel seen, feel heard, feel supported. And today we're going to explore the incredible and often understated impact that community can have on our mental health and on the mental health of those around us, and how you can play a part in building that, both for yourself and for others, because it will benefit you, it will benefit those around you. So a little bit about me before we get started, just so you know who it is that's speaking to you. I have done a session or two in the past for the MGA, so maybe you've come across me before, maybe you haven't. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jay Unwin. I'm Training and Development Director at Mental Health in Business. If you're interested in what Mental Health in Business do, by the way, mhib.co.uk, there's lots of articles and resources on there that might be useful for you. And if you've got any questions, the chat is open. But if there's something that you don't want to raise in the chat, my email address is just on the screen there at the bottom, j@mhib.co.uk. Always happy to receive emails after the session. If there's anything that you want to ask or anything you want clarifying that you didn't feel comfortable to ask in the chat, that is absolutely fine. But the chat is open, so I will be keeping an eye on that throughout. I've been working with mental health in business for about 3.5 years, and more broadly than that, in well-being, mental health, physical health, habit change, stress management, and all of the associated gubbins for almost 13 years now, ever since I burned out rather catastrophically from my first career as a science teacher. And I do still get a little bit sciencey, and I may well set you some homework at the end of the session. Can't help myself, even 13 years later. But I burned out, and that ended that career for me. A career I thought would be for life. I've actually burned out twice since then. I lost a successful personal training business in 2017, and I burned out again in 2019 as well. And I didn't burn out 3 times because I love it so much, or because I tried it and I wasn't sure whether I liked it, and I thought I'd better try it a couple more times just to be sure. But there are a lot of factors at play when it comes to mental health and stress and burnout and all of these associated bits and pieces. Lots of factors outside our control and some factors within our control. But I'll be honest, the things that weren't going right in my life externally, I wasn't really dealing with that well internally either. So that's a little bit from my burnout perspective. I also have a diagnosis of depression, which I manage on a daily basis. I have a diagnosis of fibromyalgia, which is a physical condition, manifests as chronic pain, chronic fatigue, and various other things. You might have heard of it, maybe not. But it's heavily linked to stress levels. I have also experienced suicidal thoughts. I've been bereaved by suicide in my family. And the reason I share this kind of high level view of some of the things that are a part of my own journey around mental health, there are two reasons for this. And neither of those reasons are because I want you to say, oh, poor Jay, what a hard time he's had, bless him. Because there are plenty of people out there who've had a far more difficult time than I have. In fact, there are 14 of us on this session today. There may well be people on this session who've had far more to deal with than I have in my life. So it's not about that. There are two reasons. The first reason is because it's important to me that people understand this is not me on a soapbox preaching about something that has no impact on my life. This is not just a job. This is something which I live. It's something which is important to me on a personal level. And hopefully some of the things that I share, some of the anecdotes that I use to illustrate some points as we go through the session will add a bit of a human element to it. It's not just theory. This is real life. I am a human being, the same as the rest of you, contrary to popular belief. And I have these kind of ups and downs. I have mental health, the same as everyone has mental health, same as we all have physical health. And this is important to me on a personal level. The second reason I share it is because without exception, I find that if I share a little bit about my own journey at the start, people on the sessions I deliver are more willing to share a little bit about their own journeys. Because I will be asking a few questions as we go through this session. I'll be asking for your thoughts on things. I'll be asking for your opinions on things. And I usually find, in fact, I always find that that engagement is higher if I've shared a little bit about myself, because there's almost an attitude of, oh, well, if Jay can talk about this stuff, maybe I can talk about it too. And that's what we're here to do, right? We're here to open up conversations. We're here to talk about a topic which, despite the fact that we talk about it more now than ever before, still has a bit of a stigma. So that's why I share a little bit about myself. Having said that, that's quite enough about me. The objectives for today's session, by the end of this session, when we come at 52 minutes time, you will be able to identify and describe at least 3 evidence-based ways in which community involvement can positively impact mental health. We're going to look at developing a personal action plan to increase your own community engagement, including at least 2 specific actions. We're going to look at signs of social isolation in yourself and others, so that you can spot it if there is a bit of that social isolation, list some strategies to combat it, and also look at community building activities and initiatives in your workplace, in your local area, aimed at promoting mental well-being. So there's a lot of things there that are really useful. We're going to explore the science behind social support, how to recognize isolation, practical ways to build stuff. The practical stuff is really important. This isn't just theory. And as I said, by the end of this hour, you will have a personal action plan to take forward. I guess that'll be your homework, right? I did say I would do it. So the chat is open, as I said, and it is optional, but it is a great way to connect with others who are here with you. So feel free to share thoughts, reflections, examples as we go along, ask questions. After all, why not start building community right now, right? This is a community after all. MGAA is a community. So I mentioned there'll be some interactive pieces. What better way to start it off, right? Here's a little question for you. In one word or short phrase, what does community mean to you right now? What do you think of when you think of community? What words spring to mind? Drop your thoughts in the chat for this one. So I'm going to keep an eye on the chat here. What words come to mind when you think of community? What phrase comes to mind when you think of community? Seeing as we're going to be talking about it a lot today, makes sense to have an idea of what that actually means to us. Okay, so we're starting to get some ideas coming through here. Lovely stuff. Support, together, and support. Love that. Together is such a powerful word, isn't it? People, my tribe, friendship, support network. I love that word, Tony, my tribe. Humans are tribal, right? We are social creatures. We are collaborative as a species. We are not, there's an element of competition, but if you look historically, you look at anthropology, the study of human evolution, we are to a very, very high degree collaborative, social, cooperative. So tribe is a great word for that. Lisa saying cooperation, just as I was kind of thinking of that myself, cooperation, yeah, shared goal and working together to achieve. Faye, brilliant. So even giving that kind of expansion upon Lisa's point about cooperation, sharing a goal and working together to achieve that goal. And this is really interesting, isn't it? And these are some beautiful responses as well. If you've got any more, please keep them coming. There's always a little bit of a lag, but if you've got any other thoughts, keep them coming. But these examples all remind us that community is not just a buzzword. It's emotional, it's human, it's something that we all crave, especially during times of change or challenge. I'm sure you can all think of examples when you felt more able to deal with change or more able to deal with uncertainty or more able to overcome a challenge or a period of adversity if you have been surrounded by people who support you. Okay, we talk a lot about resilience in the context of stress and mental health and things like that, but resilience gets talked about in the context of an individual trait that a person is or is not resilient. But actually resilience is a collective trait, and that working together to achieve a common goal or to overcome a period of uncertainty or challenge, that's what resilience is about, that community bandying together and supporting each other. And you can see examples, famous examples throughout history. You always hear about things like the Blitz spirit and how communities came together to support each other. Our natural predisposition is to help each other, not to fight each other. Okay, there is some competition, as I said. I'm not naive here, but we are primarily collaborative. And some of those answers there are absolutely wonderful. And please, as we continue through this session, I do encourage you to hold those ideas in mind, your definition of community in mind, so that you keep that grounded and centered on that definition. I've seen Mark saying connection. We live in a time where from one perspective, perhaps we're more connected than ever before, but are we having, is it we've got this breadth of connection, lots of connection, but do we have any deep connection, or do we have as much deep connection? And connection is what builds that community, isn't it? It's the depth of connection with the people around us. It's not about how many people we know. It's not about how many people we interact with, because now it's thousands or millions because of things like social media, but it's about how deeply we connect with people. So hopefully, as we go through this session and you keep these ideas in mind, you'll see that these things can be utilized, or these definitions can be used, and then the strategies we talk about can be utilized in the workplace and in your personal life too. Because a community, and if we look at some of the words that were shared there about support, tribe, support network, cooperation, working together, they're relevant at work and outside of work. In fact, community is just a group of people, right? In fact, company, the word company just means a group of people, doesn't it? Because you could have had a company of soldiers. You could say, oh, we've got company, when someone's visiting. And a company, in the business sense, is a group of people working together on a common goal. Right? It's a group of people working together to achieve a certain thing. So company, community, all of these things come from the same language origins. So let's start, now we've got an idea of what community means to each of us, with what a bit of research tells us. Because strong community ties have consistently been linked with better mental health outcomes. And this isn't just a feel-good idea, it is evidence-based as well. We've all got that kind of anecdotal example, but what's some of the actual statistical evidence of this? Well, people who feel connected to their community are 2.5 times more likely to report good mental well-being. Okay, so that's the first statistic there from the Mental Health Foundation from within the last couple of years, that 2.5 times more likely people who are connected to their community, 2.5 times more likely to report good mental well-being. 2.5 times more. That's an incredible leap. 1 in 4 adults, though, feel lonely some or all of the time. A quarter, 25% of adults in the UK feel lonely some or all of the time. And you can feel lonely even when you're surrounded by people, because again, it's about the quality of connection. You can feel lonely even in a group. That's from the Office of National Statistics. Interestingly, the most common statistic used around the number of people in the UK who will experience mild to moderately poor mental health, mild to moderate anxiety, mild to moderate depression in any given year is 1 in 4 as well. I wonder how much of a crossover those two 1 in 4 statistics have, because I would imagine there is a significant crossover between those two groups of people. Loneliness has been shown to be as harmful to physical health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, from a study from 10 years ago. Really interestingly, if you actually look at this in a little bit more depth, I did say I was a science teacher. I'd like to nerd out on this stuff. They looked at lack of social integration alongside other risk factors such as smoking, such as poor diet, such as sedentary lifestyle, such as alcohol use. And they ranked the impact on something called all-cause mortality, which means dying of anything, i.e. dying before the life expectancy. And they found that loneliness, social isolation, lack of social integration, whatever you want to call it, was top of the list in terms of risk factors. It has a greater impact on your lifespan than smoking, than poor diet, than exercise or lack thereof, than drinking alcohol, all of which we know have a big impact on that stuff, but not as big an impact as social isolation. Okay, that's something to be really, really mindful of. And we actually can think about examples where that might be the case, where we see people lose their community. For example, when they retire and their work was a big source of community for them, or they move to a new area, a new part of the country where they don't know anyone, especially if they are already retired and they don't have maybe as much getting out and about and meeting people. And people have shorter life expectancies as a result. The other thing it impacts is something called health span. So lifespan is the number of years you live. Health span is the number of years you have good quality health for. And social isolation has a bigger impact on that than all of those other factors as well. When a poll was put out to rank the factors that they researched as to what people thought was the most impactful, social isolation was the least impactful in terms of that poll, in terms of that survey. People don't think it has as big an impact. Smoking was right up there. Smoking, I think, was at the top of what people voted for, saying this is what must impact lifespan more than anything else. And social integration was right down at the bottom, but actually it was right at the top in the research. So that's something to be really, really aware of. Really quite surprising for a lot of people. And finally, social connectedness improves resilience, as we already talked about. It enhances recovery from difficulties around mental health. So your recovery from a period of depression or anxiety or anything else is improved. And it's also a predictor of life satisfaction. People are more satisfied with their lives if they have a good level of social connectedness. Again, it's not about the numbers. It's about the quality of how socially connected you feel. Community acts as a protective buffer. It reduces stress. It supports emotional regulation. It gives people a sense of purpose. It gives people a sense of meaning. We are wired for this stuff. And it doesn't need to be about large groups. Single reliable connection, that can sometimes be enough. That one friend, that one person who you know you can rely on can sometimes be enough. Or a small group. Whether we consider ourselves to be introvert or extrovert, an extrovert might have a bigger network, an introvert might just have maybe 3 really close friends. It doesn't matter. It's the quality. And a community can look like many things. It can look like a really close-knit family. It can look like a local group, a colleague who checks in regularly. It could be an online space that feels safe and welcoming. Online spaces, like I said, perhaps now we're more connected than ever in that sense. It's not always a great surrogate for face-to-face community. However, for some people, that ability to connect and build communities online, whether they've got a physical or mental limitation when it comes to getting out and meeting people in person, whether they have a physical disability, for example, or whether they are experiencing something like agoraphobia, which prevents them from getting outside as much as perhaps they'd like to, then the online spaces can be really powerful. It's also great for marginalized groups who are in perhaps the village they live in. They're the only transgender person, for example, but then there's online spaces they can join so they don't feel as alone. So there are online spaces that can feel so safe and welcoming as well. So I've got another little question for you for in the chat. Can you think of a time when a sense of community supported your well-being? And what was it about that connection that helped you? Feel free to kind of share your thoughts. Have a little reflect on this. Think of a time when a sense of community supported your well-being, and what was it about that connection that helped you? One for me that's been very, very powerful for my own well-being and my own feelings of being supported by people and not being on my own, not being isolated, is bonding with people over music. In my teenage years, I got heavily into punk and metal and other alternative genres of music. Heavy music is my thing. And I found an entire community around that. I found an entire friendship group around that. I was listening to music that talked a lot about difficult things that I was experiencing, that other musical genres didn't talk about. And I found other people who had similar experiences to me, who I could bond with and I could feel supported by, and I could support in return. And that's something which has carried me through life. And this is both in person and online, and forums and various things before social media, but in person and now as well, going to gigs and festivals. The feeling of connection, in a few weeks' time, I'll be going to Download Festival. The feeling of connection there, despite it being 90,000, 100,000 people, most of which I've never met in my life, but yet I feel connected to. But I feel connected to. I could stop and speak to any of those people, and I know that they'd be someone that I can bond with and build rapport with. And feeling supported by that group of people has been incredibly powerful to me. And that's not to mention the fact that I've got a really solid friendship group in the little village that I live in Devon as well. So I've got people around me physically on my road and neighboring roads, and we all help each other out. We've got a local community like that. So what have we got in the chat? Tony's starting us off there. Post redundancy, I went to LinkedIn for support on improving interview practice. I found recent and not so recent past colleagues who were very generous with this, and also rewriting my CV. I love that. It's so specific as well, isn't it? That there was this thing that you needed, this challenge you were facing. We were looking at that idea of working together, that idea of cooperation, and helping us through periods of change, periods of challenge. And redundancy is a huge period of change. It's a huge period of uncertainty. There can be feelings of grief from losing that role that you had, and having people who've had other experiences like that and can help you with their own what they've learned in those periods can be so powerful. Not just with the specifics of, for your example, improving interview practice or rewriting your CV, but also knowing that there's someone there who's got your back, someone there who's going to listen to you, someone there you can talk to. Mark, music too, particularly festivals, clubs and gigs since I was a teenager and ongoing. I'm really glad to hear that as well, Mark. And that's something that, as I said, I can really relate to. Something I actually found on as an additional note on that is that I lost that part of my personality, that part of my character for a long time. Between maybe my mid-20s and my mid-30s, there was a period of about 10 years where I disconnected from that group entirely, that community entirely. And it's almost like I'd lost a part of myself. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I rediscovered that part of myself and all of the people that came along with that. And that was really powerful for me. Help from strangers when caught up in recent Spain power outage trying to get home. Ah, interesting. Yeah, so that's kind of like that makes me think of maybe on a much smaller scale that blitz attitude, isn't it? Where everyone's experiencing adversity, everyone's experiencing a challenge, everyone's experiencing something going wrong, albeit not being bombed in this case, but we're all experiencing this thing. And rather than becoming competitive and rather than becoming, oh, I can't trust anyone around me, it's right. Let's help each other here. Let's support each other. We're all trying to get home. We're all trying to navigate this challenge. How can we do that together? Because we all have different skills. We all have different strengths. We all have different character traits. We can't be everything to everyone. We can't have all the answers ourselves. And so when we band together, we can get through those things, trying to get home, trying to stay safe in situations where on our own, it's just not going to happen. It's only in the movies that you have these lone wolf kind of characters, right? These lone wolves out in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. That wouldn't work in real life. You need community. There's some really great responses there. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing. And if you've got any more to share as we go along, please do. Now, what we want to do now is flip this on its head a little bit, because we've just looked at those times when that sense of community has supported our well-being. But what happens when connection is missing? Social isolation can be a hard one to spot. especially in high functioning individuals who might mask this quite a lot and be like, yeah, I'm fine on my own. It's that kind of lone wolf attitude again. But it's not just about being physically alone, such as someone who lives on their own, someone who doesn't have a family that lives with them, someone that is, like I said, again, retired and is physically on their own. You can feel isolated even in a room full of people. So what's some signs that we need to watch out for that someone around us or maybe ourselves are experiencing that social isolation? Reduced participation in activities, both online and offline. So reducing, when we say reduced, obviously people have different participation levels anyway. But if someone's kind of participation is reducing, they're getting stuck in less, whether it's online, offline, that's something that we might want to be aware of. Increased irritability, so perhaps more snappy, but also on the other side, emotional flatness and not responding to things and just kind of having this almost like numb attitude. Withdrawal, which of course ties in with that reduced participation, but withdrawal from conversations, withdrawal from usual routines, feelings of disconnection, hard to spot in others, but maybe you'll notice that you feel disconnected even when surrounded by other people. And potentially as well, feelings of hopelessness, feelings of disinterest in the future, or expressions thereof from people around you. So you might feel hopeless, hopelessness being that feeling that things aren't going to get better. This is just the way it is now. Nothing's going to get better. Not really interested in the future, or people around you suggesting that's the case as well. And interestingly, workplaces are a key space where isolation can take root because we're getting more remote work, we're getting hybrid setups, we're also getting things like back-to-back meetings, which have their own kind of downfalls in terms of stress. But all of these things can slip into routine interactions that lack depth, routine interactions where we're just going through the motions, we're not actually connecting to any great degree, we're just saying the things that we say. And isolation isn't just uncomfortable or unpleasant. It is also dangerous. As we established earlier on, it can increase the risk of depression or anxiety. It can increase the risk of cognitive decline, i.e. your brain functions not functioning as they should be. Your ability to solve problems declining, your memory becoming impaired. And it is, as I said, according to some studies, the biggest factor in all-cause mortality. So what can we actually do about this? What are some strategies for early intervention? If we notice that we are feeling withdrawn, irritable, disconnected, hopeless, or we notice that someone around us is doing the same, what can we actually do? Here are a few ideas. The first thing is to use specific observable language when checking in. And what I mean by this is when you check in with someone, use language that is not accidental, it's not automatic, it's conscious, it's deliberate. What have you noticed? I've noticed you haven't spoken much in our last few meetings. How are things going for you at the moment? Would you like to chat about anything? So you can use specifics to really touch base with someone that you have noticed a change in. If you are having a conversation with someone, then that can be a really powerful way to go. And when I say when I say having a conversation with someone, make time to have those conversations. Even a "how are you" really, and what I mean by that, it doesn't necessarily have to be those exact words, but how are things going for you right now? What's going on for you? What have you been up to? How are you feeling? Because the really in this sentence stops it from being "how are you? Fine, thanks, you." That's what I mean about automatic, not deliberate, not well thought out kind of conversations. When we say "how are you" to someone, we don't expect a true answer, do we? "How are you? Fine, thanks, you." Can't complain. Yeah, fine. No, not too shabby. It's always just a generic response. So how are you really, whether you use those words or not, is just about actually making time to hear the real answer. What's going on for you at the moment? How's your morning been? How's your week been? How's 2025 been for you so far? Is there anything going on for you at the moment that you need to get off your chest? What's going well for you at the moment? What's not going so well? That's one of my favorites because you're not expecting them to complain or come out with something that is a real challenge for them. They feel less like they're going to be a burden because you've asked them what's going well as well. What's going well for you at the moment? What's not going so well? Let's have a catch up. Making time for that has a couple of huge impacts. Number one, you will get genuine information from the person, so you'll understand what they're going through, which is useful for you as a friend, as a colleague, maybe you're a manager. Getting that information is really valuable. But also that person will feel valued. That person will say, wow, this person actually cares. This person is asking me not because they have to, not because it's just a kind of glib question, but they genuinely want to know how I'm doing. And that itself is so powerful in terms of connection, people feeling valued, people feeling connected in that way. And building on these two, building on having that time for conversations and using that particular language that's deliberate, creating norms in your group where it is okay to talk about how you're feeling, where it's okay to talk about struggles and adversity, what you're going through, how you're feeling. And you do this by doing the other two things, making time, having those conversations, using deliberate language, specific language, asking those maybe a little bit tougher questions because sometimes we're afraid of what they might say. We don't want to hear that someone is struggling with something, but being brave enough to do so, that's what creates that norm, that new norm where it's okay to talk about this stuff, where that trust is there. It builds that trust. It's just a few little things at this stage which can be so powerful in terms of creating that environment. Again, little opportunity for you to add your own thoughts on this. What's one thing you've done that helped reduce feelings of isolation in a team or in your family or in your friendship group, or something that you've seen done well by a colleague, by a friend, by a family member, by one of your managers, something in the media, something that you've seen in another friendship group or another team? What have you done or seen done well that helped reduce feelings of isolation? I'm quite lucky that I've got some friends who are very open about this stuff. And I had a period recently where I was experiencing maybe for 3 or 4 weeks, a period of quite bad depression for the first time in quite a while. And I had a friend who noticed that I withdrew, who noticed that I was feeling a bit isolated, even though things hadn't changed externally, but I was almost isolating myself as a result of how I was feeling. And he made the effort to check in on me. He made the effort to ask me how I was, genuinely. It was like, I've noticed you've been a bit quiet when we were out the other day. How's everything going for you at the moment? How are you feeling? And he also offered, because he knows I'm not a talker, surprisingly, given that speaking is my job, but I don't really talk if I'm feeling low. And he said, well, do you want to go for a walk sometime? We don't have to talk, but we could just go for a walk. And that's that. And that felt like there wasn't the pressure on me to talk, but it got me out. It got me socializing. It got me connecting, even though barely a word was spoken. And that was really pivotal in me coming back out of that period of depression. How about you? What's something that you've seen or something that you've done that's helped reduce feelings of isolation in a team or in a community setting? Be really interesting to hear your experiences on this, because again, when we add our own kind of human elements to this and our stories and our experiences, quite often you will take just as much, if not more, from each other in the chat than you will from the content that I share today, because you'll be sharing your real world ideas. I'm sharing some stuff, you're going to share some other stuff, and people will take from that what is most relevant to them. And the more range that we can put out there, the more likely there is to be something that is useful for someone who's watching this session. Tony, my daughter has her own wellness issues that she struggles with. On a day when this happened, her colleague recognized the triggers and excused them both in the office to go outside and change the mood. That makes me feel so happy that there are people out there doing this and that are, number one, aware of what people are experiencing, like aware of maybe some stuff that's going on long term. Number two, tuned in enough to recognize the triggers and recognize something that might put that challenge more into the foreground. And three, willing to do something about that. And that to me is the crux of all of this, is that if we watch out for each other, if we look out for each other rather than being too hyper individualized, as maybe we've been conditioned to be focused on ourselves in quite a quite a lot of the time and quite a lot of the energy that we have. We're quite focused on ourselves, and this isn't a throwing shade at anyone. This is the way we've been conditioned by society. And if we get stuck back into looking after each other as a community, I saw a little quote the other day which said one of the biggest ways that we fail people is by recommending self-care when what that person really needs is community care. And I thought that's really interesting because community care is so, so important. And that was a great example of that, Tony. Love it. Kat, going for long walks with a friend to get out into the countryside, especially after a full day working from home, is our version of a commute home to clear our heads. I remember seeing this becoming a bit of a trend during COVID when the remote or hybrid working really kicked off. Obviously, there were people who did it before. I've worked from home since, oh, I don't even know, 2012, 2013, in most ways. So I was quite used to it, but a lot of people were not used to that sudden shift to working from home. And I remember seeing this idea of a virtual commute or I can't remember how else they termed it. But I had friends who would get ready for work, leave the house, walk around the block, come back into their own house and treat it as their work day. And then when they finish their work day, leave their house, walk around the block in the opposite direction, come back into their same house, and it was now not work time. And it gave them a bookend to the days. And I thought that was a really interesting thing. So the fact that you're doing that, but then also doing it with a friend, clear your heads, touch base, you've got the opportunity then to talk. And there's a really interesting concept around walking and talking, which is that, and you might have seen this online with influencers making videos. You know, when people make a video and they're walking and talking to camera, they're talking to their phone, they're walking down the street or they're walking through a field somewhere, walking through the woods and they're talking to the camera and they're making their content. The reason that that is effective is because it builds trust. If someone is walking and talking, you're more likely to believe what they're saying. Why is this? Well, who do you go for a walk with? You go for walks with people you like. You go for walks with people you trust. You go for walks with people who are part of your tribe, right? People you feel safe with. And so when you watch content, it taps into that part of our kind of primal psyche. And so having that walk, you're more likely to open up because there's fresh air, there's movement, but also you feel like you're in an environment where there is trust, where there is safety. Move to a neutral environment, coffee, walk, etc. Yeah, a couple of months ago, our company had a neurodiversity celebration week. Love that. The more and more that these things are talked about, the more they come into kind of daily life, and we don't necessarily need a celebration week for things as much when they become part of a normal part of life. But until that is the case, having things like a neurodiversity celebration week, or having things like where you have Pride Month, or you have things like various different celebrations of groups of people who have historically been oppressed in various ways, can make people feel valued. It can make people feel like they belong. It can make people feel included. It can make people feel connected. So I love it when companies have those initiatives and companies have those celebrations, so that anyone in the organization who identifies that way or experiences that particular thing can go, yes, this is me. I'm part of the group still. I'm not an outcast. I feel included. I feel part of this of this group of people, this community, and that makes me feel valued. It makes me feel like I trust the people around me. It makes me feel part of that tribe. So some really good examples coming through there. Now, how do we build community, right? We want to start building community. And some of this is common sense in a way, because of course we are social creatures and we are wired for it, but sometimes we've had it drilled out of us and sometimes we've forgotten. How do we create these environments where people feel like they belong? Belonging isn't just about being part of a group, because that alone isn't enough. It's about being able to show up as yourself without fear of exclusion. So Mark's example of the neurodiversity celebration week, people being able to show up as themselves without fear of exclusion. Example that I gave about music and the alternative community, being able to show up as myself without fear of exclusion. Whereas prior to that, when I was trying to fit in, and when I didn't try and fit in and I was kind of showing up as myself, I felt ostracized by other people in my year group, for example, and I was bullied a bit. Finding a group where I could show up as myself without fear of exclusion was really powerful. So it's not just about being part of the group, it's about being part of the group but being able to be you as well. Some examples that we can look at as well before we look at some things that we can do in terms of actual behaviors. Some examples of groups and communities that have sprung up over recent years. Men's Sheds, I don't know whether you've heard of this group, Men's Sheds UK, community spaces where men can gather to connect over practical tasks, but also mutual support as well. So this is it's a support group in a way, but it's not marketed as such. It is a men's space where practical tasks are done, woodwork, metalwork, crafting, things which are very practical. And it gives people an opportunity to talk openly because, again, there's this feeling of safety. There's this feeling of bonding over the tasks that they're doing. Really, really powerful stuff. And this, arguably, there's been a lot of talk recently about men's mental health, and male loneliness epidemic has been a term that's thrown around. Spaces for men and young men and teenage boys to find positive role models, to find a way of discovering their masculinity, which is a very good way of finding that kind of comfort in themselves, that self-esteem, which is great for mental health and leads to people being these boys being productive and constructive members of society rather than feeling disillusioned and disconnected. So groups like that can be really, really powerful. Cafe spaces, mental health cafes in particular, I'm talking about here across the UK. This isn't clinical stuff. This is providing a welcoming place for connection. Mental health cafes where people can go and talk about their experiences and say, this is how I felt when this happened. And someone else going, oh, you know what? That happened to me as well, but I felt a little bit different. I felt like this. And just discussing these experiences without fear of exclusion. Within companies, various companies have peer groups that create affinity, shared experiences, but also leadership opportunities as well. I was working with one of our clients recently and looking into, they have these things called belong groups and these internal employee networks, a very large organization. And they have groups based on things like interests and stuff like that. But they have also groups based on things like disabilities. They have groups based on generations. So they have people, young people who are new in the workforce, who've just come out of education into the workforce. They have groups for them. They have people who are nearing retirement. They have groups for them. And these internal employee networks, if you don't have them, it can be such a great way of sharing those experiences and providing people the opportunities to develop skills and develop leadership opportunities. And in a similar way, buddy systems, matching new employees with someone else to support onboarding, to support connection. Same with remote employees, remote members of the team, buddying people up so they have someone to turn to when they need some help. They have that first port of call. You sometimes have this done as a bi-directional mentoring situation. So you could have someone who's brand new in the industry, someone who is really experienced and has been around for decades. The new person can learn from the person who's been around for ages, but the person who's been around for ages and is really experienced can also learn stuff from the new person about their experiences. So this mentoring can work in both directions. So whether it's a buddy system, a mentoring system, you're creating connection, you're creating this co support system, which is just incredibly powerful in an organization where, especially with new people or remote people, they feel a bit disconnected. They feel like, I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I don't know who to turn to other than my line manager. I want to have someone other than my manager. Buddy systems can really help with that. And belonging starts with something called psychological safety as well. Psychological safety is something I could talk about for hours on its own. Essentially what it means is the ability to show up, the ability to ask questions, the ability to make mistakes, the ability to talk about how you feel without reprisals. Because when people know that they won't be judged or ignored or excluded, they're more likely to contribute and they're more likely to stay. So this is a huge win, not just for well-being and not just for quality of life, not just as human beings trying to do nice things for other human beings, but for team cohesion and for performance. There is a business argument for this. There is a business case for this. It improves your bottom line. It improves your top line. Okay. People are working more effectively because they feel safe. They feel supported. There's less turnover. There's less absenteeism and presenteeism. So as a leader, a peer, a teammate, Small behaviors can really make this difference. So what kind of things can you do that make this difference? Remembering people's names and pronouns as well, which is more of a modern or more of a recent discussion. But remembering names and pronouns. And when I say names, I mean preferred names. Okay, so whether someone has changed their name, I'm James actually on paper, but I don't like being called James. I've never been called James in my life, not even by my parents. So people remembering to call me Jay because that's how I introduce myself. I remember seeing something once which said, "What's someone's name is the most powerful word in anyone's language." I've probably butchered that quote, but the idea is that remembering someone's name shows them that you care, that you've switched on, you're listening to them. And as someone who doesn't automatically remember names very easily, that's something I've had to work on to really try and remember it because I know how important it is to someone. What do they want to be called? Call them that. Okay. It's so, so key to making someone feel valued and feel like they belong. Another thing you can do is invite quieter voices into the conversation. Don't let the loud voices dominate. As a lifelong loud voice, I understand how damaging that can be. I didn't at the time. My sister is, for example, a lot quieter than me, and she grew up, she's 2 years younger than me, feeling like she couldn't get a word in edgeways, and that made her withdraw even more. Okay, that's something which these days I'm much more aware of. I can get excited. I can talk a lot. I need to stop and listen to other people. If you've got people like that around you, brilliant. That's great. But also invite the quieter voices in. Once that person has shared their ideas, turn around to someone else in the team and say, "Hey, what do you think about this? Have you got any thoughts about what we're discussing?" Invite them in. Don't wait for them to volunteer. Invite them in. Make them feel valued. Make them feel like their opinion matters, that their voice matters. And another thing, and I shared this right at the start, a bit of my own vulnerability, a bit of my own humanity. Share yours, like you've already been doing in the chat a little bit, but share your vulnerability. Show your humanity. Make other people feel like you're not some person who has everything figured out, because we all know none of us have it all figured out. We're all winging it. Show that. And being vulnerable doesn't mean being open about every single thing. Being vulnerable doesn't mean being an open book and sharing everything about your life to everyone you meet. Being vulnerable can be within the parameters that you're comfortable to do so. Within the parameters that you're comfortable to do so. What do you feel okay to share? Might be a little bit raw, might be a little bit like, oh, I haven't really shared this before, might be a little bit of a challenge. That's different to being like, I haven't dealt with this trauma yet and I'm going to dump it on everyone else. It's vulnerability within what you're reasonably comfortable with. And the more comfortable you get with it, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it. So have a little think about that. What's one small thing you could do to help others feel like they belong in your workplace or in your community? Not something for the chat, just something to reflect on. This one's not for the chat, just to think about. What's one small thing that you already do or could do to help others feel like they belong in your workplace or in your community? So let's bring this all together with a bit of action as we come towards the last 10 minutes of the session, because it's no good having the theory, of course, if we don't make it practical. If connection supports mental health, how do we build it in ways that feel natural, sustainable, and inclusive? So this is a few more examples of actions that we can take. And I'm going to give you 5 personal actions, and then I'm going to give you 5 actions you could take in the workplace, and then a few ideas of what I think are the building blocks of meaningful community. And then you're going to share with me what you're going to do. You're going to share with me 2 things, 2 actions that you're going to take. Okay. So that's just to give you that idea of what's coming down the line. Okay. So start having to think about which of these you're going to act on. So on a personal level, reach out to a person this week. We're on Monday. You've got the rest of the week, and it is Mental Health Awareness Week. So what better time to do it? One person that you've lost touch with or you haven't heard from in a while. In fact, one of the things that I'm doing this week is I'm just sharing a few actions on LinkedIn. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, feel free to do so. But when I shared my advice, my actionable point on LinkedIn this morning, it just said about reaching out to someone. That's my first tip for anyone, because there's so much discussion, so much thought leadership, and I just posted saying, message someone you haven't heard from in a while. Really, really powerful to do, and very, very simple. That's something I'll be doing today. What about joining a group? What about starting a group if you can't join one, if one doesn't already exist, based on a shared interest or an experience. Look at what's available in your local community. And if you don't have one, start one. It's a little bit of a bigger action, of course. What about scheduling an informal connection once a week? A call, a coffee, a message, 15 minutes, something small. 15 minutes to have a coffee with one of your colleagues once a week and chat. Have an informal connection. Or like, oh, I say a colleague, sorry, these ones are supposed to be personal ones, not workplace ones. So a coffee 15 minutes before work with a friend or after work, meeting someone, going for a walk at lunchtime with one of your friends, going and walking the dog at the weekend, anything informal, but just catching up. Volunteer locally, volunteer virtually, support a cause that you care about. Volunteering is an incredible way that a method that people use to connect. My mum, for example, is retired, but she volunteers with an organisation called Food in the Community, who collect food from local producers that can't be sold. So, for example, food that's grown on a farm that cannot be sold because it's not the perfect shape or the perfect color. You know what food criteria are like these days. So anything that's what they call graded out, they'll go up and pick up all of that stuff, and then they box it up and take it out to families, low-income families, refugee families, families who can't afford or don't have the capacity to get this stuff themselves, and they get this box of fresh food delivered once a week. It might be bread from the bakers that couldn't be sold that day, so it's like it can't be sold tomorrow because it might be a bit stale, but it's still great, still can be used by these families. And my mum volunteers for that, and that's given her community. That's given her community, which she doesn't have anymore because of being retired. So volunteering is really powerful, and you can do that online as well. There's lots of online volunteering jobs as well. And invite a colleague for a no agenda coffee catch up, or this can tie in with reaching out to one person or scheduling that informal connection, but making sure that you get that no agenda coffee catch up in. What about in the workplace then? What's some actions we can do here? Well, if you run meetings, add a 5-minute check-in to the start of the meeting. How's everyone doing today? How's everyone feeling? Make it not about performance, could be about stress, could be about, is there anything that people want to share? Is there anything that people are finding challenging at the moment? Let's open up here and go around the whole room. Ask everyone if there's something that they want to share, because again, the quiet voices might not talk about it. But add that check into the start of meetings. And if you don't run the meetings, if you're not a manager, advocate for it. Say, I think that this might be a really good idea, something for us to do in our meetings. What do you think? Go to your manager and talk about it. You could create a well-being or inclusion group, an employee-led group, a belonging group in your company, in your team, so that you can support people. This is something which my eldest daughter's secondary school have started doing for students. They've got a student-led well-being group. It's run by sixth formers. They've just started it last week, and my daughter, she's in year 8, went along to it. Other than the people running it, she was the only one there. She's an early adopter, but it's going to be something that grows and snowballs, and it's student-led, and that's the difference. So an employee-led wellbeing group, could you start one of those? Could you use internal comms to spotlight stories and moments, culture moments, shout outs, things that people have done well, things that highlighting a certain person in the team and telling stories about what that person, and you only get an idea of what these stories are and what these moments are by having the check-ins and having the conversations. But if there's something, someone shares a story, you say, wow, would it be all right to share that story in an email to the team? Let people know that that's an option. If they're not happy to do that, that's fine. You don't have to. But is there something which you could push out to the whole team that is going to add value for them and make the person for whom that story is their life, or that culture is their life, feel valued, feel included, feel that they belong? Start a connection challenge where teams are encouraged to share gratitude or to highlight unseen contributions. So who's been doing what? Who in your team has done really well? Showing that kudos, that respect, that shout out culture makes people feel validated. It makes people feel good. It makes people feel like they're part of the team and that what they're doing is appreciated. And also, along with those 5-minute check-ins, what other meeting rituals could you add in that foster those small moments of connection? Little question, what went well this week? What's something you're grateful for? You could have a different prompt each time. It could be that you start the meeting with a 5-minute check-in and then finish it with this little connection ritual with a certain prompt. You could work with your team to create those prompts. You could use AI systems to find like, what could I put in these prompts at the end of the meetings? It doesn't need to be a huge amount of work for you. It doesn't. It will take a little bit of effort. It will take a little bit of conscious thought and putting these things into practice, but it doesn't need to take over everything. It's something that is all of this stuff is within your ability. And the building blocks of meaningful community. Just three things to remember, no matter which of these do you decide to do. The first thing is consistency, recurring contact over time, not one and done. Whatever you do, do it regularly, do it consistently, make it recur. That is where the magic happens. Repetition, 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 right? Consistency is key for anything. If you want to get stronger, you have to consistently train. If you want to get healthier, you have to consistently look at what you're eating and eat healthily. If you want to get better at your job, you have to consistently learn. If you want to get better at playing the guitar, you have to consistently practice. If you want to build community, you have to consistently contact, touch base, show that support, show that value. Reciprocity. This is the rule of giving and receiving. If you give something, someone is more likely to then give back. Don't expect to wait for someone else to do it for you. Be the first to do it. But giving and receiving support, it goes both ways. It's mutual. If you look at mutual aid and the concept of mutual aid, it's helping each other out, not with the idea of personal gain, not with trade. Oh, well, if I do this for you, what am I getting in return? Just give and receive because it all balances out in the end. And by giving support, you are doing wonders for your own well-being as well. And finally, shared values, shared goals. Find something that unites the group. Values, goals. What are you working towards? What's important to you? Find the common ground. Find the thing which you all agree on or that you can all use as a foundation for going forward. Now, community doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to be formal. Arguably, the best connections start small, right? A message, a lunch, a shared interest or value. When we create that consistency, practice reciprocity, unite around shared values, we lay that foundation for lasting, meaningful community. And when you take action, even small action, you model for others what's possible. You give permission, you create momentum, and each moment of authentic connection strengthens the fabric of well-being for you and for your team, for your colleagues, for your family, everyone who crosses your path. So in a world that sometimes feels more divided, polarized, lonely, overwhelming than maybe it ever has done in the past, building community is an act of hope. It's a leadership move. It's a well-being strategy. It's a gift to yourself and to those around you. So I'd like you to share in the chat as we close off, what are two things that you're going to do as part of your action plan to strengthen your community or to start building your community this month? So we've got 2 minutes. Drop your thoughts in the chat right now. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Every connection matters. Every moment of kindness, every inclusion, every shared presence, it all has a ripple effect. You don't need a big platform. You just need intention. So start thinking about this personalized action plan. What are you going to do? And it will be an evolving document. So keep coming back to it, adding to it, making adjustments. But I'd like you to share in the chat and write down in your notes 2 specific actions. They can be tiny, they can be big, whatever you want. And while you're doing that, I will share my email address again in case you've got any questions. Just at the bottom there, j@mhib.co.uk. So I'm going to keep an eye on the chat because I want to see some of these commitments to action coming through. This is your homework, remember. I'm getting you to set your own homework here. What are you going to do differently? We've looked at the research on community and mental health. We've recognized that importance of tackling isolation. We've looked at some practical ideas for building belonging, making those personal commitments more meaningful. I've seen some starting to come through here. Not wait for someone else to arrange that community get together. Love that. reach out to a person I lost contact with once a week. Alan, I'm on that with you. That is my goal today. I'm going to go through my WhatsApp and I'm going to find someone I haven't spoken to in ages and go, hey, mate. In fact, I'll tell you who I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it to Mike, who was best man at my wedding, and I haven't seen him in years. He was best man at my wedding. He's one of my best friends at uni, lived with him for 3 years, and I haven't spoken to him in a long time. Never met his kids either. So that's who I'm going to message. So I'm on you. I'm on that with you, Alan. Love that. Contact a colleague I've not heard from in a while who's in the middle of organising his wedding and I suspect is feeling the stress. Absolutely. Yeah, that is always a stressful situation, isn't it? Look, folks, keep those coming if they're coming in. I'll keep an eye on it. But as we move forward, please remember that every small action we take, each check-in, each welcoming gesture, all of the things that you're sharing about. Oh, Tony, insurance conference in Manchester. Is that the Bieber? If that's Bieber, Tony, come find me. All right. Mental health and business are at that conference. So if that's the one that you're on about, because that is in Manchester and it's this week, come find me. I'd love to meet you in person. So yeah, let's build that connection and contribute to that stronger environment. And community isn't built overnight, right, folks? This is my final little thought. It's not built overnight. It does begin, however, with everyday moments of kindness, of inclusion. So keep showing up, keep reaching out, and know that your efforts matter. That's how we build community. That's how we support our own mental well-being and that of those around us. Thank you so much for your attention over this past hour. Have a wonderful rest of your week. And if any of you are at Bieber conference this week, come find me. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn and talk more about this stuff, always happy to do so as well. Thanks again.
Hey, thank you ever so much. We are slightly over, so I'll make it short and sweet and just ask really nicely if people can click on the survey link before they leave. But massive thank you to Jade. That was, really, really interesting. Lots to think about and lots of actions to take. And I'm also in Manchester, so hopefully I will see some of you. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining. And yeah, most importantly, thank you to Jay for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.